evening, race fans, and welcome to iRacing's coverage of the season opener for the 2022 eNASCAR College iRacing Series, powered by NACE Starleague. Live from iRacing's virtual Daytona International Speedway in Daytona Beach, Florida, Play Fly Sports 60. James Pike here alongside Justin Prince. And Justin, we've got so many great, talented college iRacing drivers tonight. We've got $50,000 in scholarship money that we're going to get the chance to give away. We're going to give $13,500 of that over the next three races. We'll go to Charlotte and we'll go to Watkins Glen. But tonight, we start at the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway.
And you can only be a part of history once at this type of a stage, a chance for many of these drivers to represent their colleges and universities from across the U.S. and Canada at the big stage like this. This is a huge opportunity for many of these drivers and these students tonight to showcase what they can do in the virtual world, James. I can't wait to see how they handle Daytona. After all, you never know who could win at the World Center of Racing.
Before we go racing tonight, we've got a few words from the Play Fly Sports CEO and founder, Michael Schreiber.
Hey, it's Mike Schreiber. I'm the founder and CEO of Play Fly Sports. We're one of the leading sports marketing and media companies in the US. We actually drive significant value for all sports organizations within our portfolio, whether it's pro sports, college sports, high school sports, or esports, what we're here today to talk about. So we appreciate and are excited to be a partner with NASCAR and eNASCAR. Both Play Fly Sports and our CSL esports division are dedicated to focus on education, engineering, and driving new concepts through esports. So thanks for everybody for having us here.
Justin, let's learn a little bit more about the World Center of Racing. Daytona International Speedway is a name known throughout the motorsports world, and for good reason. This is one of the fastest and most prestigious tracks in all the world.
Especially with its 2.5 miles distance, 4.02 kilometers around this facility, opens since 1959 and brings plenty of thrilling racing across its high degrees of banking. High speeds expected here for these competitors, and you never know when trouble could strike. Keep in mind, this track, approximately 500 acres worth of motorsports action from a day-to-day and a year-to-year basis.
It's a very big racetrack, one of the biggest that we find on the NASCAR circuit. But for now, and for the most famous words in motorsports, we now turn to iRacing's manager of sales and marketing, Angela Tagarello, to give the command.
Thanks, James. I'm super excited to kick off this series. Drivers, start your engines!
Take a look at tonight's starting grid. Santiago Gutierrez with the fast time in qualifying of a 52.254 second lap to take the pole for UNC Charlotte. The 49ers start up front alongside Reese Bayham in that first row. Second row will be Rutgers' own Daniel Budafuco and Christina Ryan out of Ohio University. Row 3, Dylan Alt and Jack Painter from UNC Wilmington. Starting 7th and 8th, it's Alex Kalnix and Jose Solis Jr. for the UConn Huskies. The top 10 are completed by Ryan Doucette and Anthony Keys.
Then you have Alexander Russell starting 11 tonight. He is from Madison College. He'll start alongside Jake Cummings in the number 95. Then behind him is Connor Okresnik. He'll start alongside Thomas Toomey in row number 7. Row 8 features Derek Jennings and Athena Leclerc, rounding out the top 8 starting rows from St. Clair College in Canada. Then it's Malachi Drake, Hagan Johnson, rounding out the top 9, WKU and Clemson respectively. Jonathan Diamond and Daniel Carter round up the top 20.
21st on the grid for George Mason is Jackson Shipley. He'll be joined on the outside of row 11 by Connor Hale. Row number 12 features the Iowa Hawkeyes' own Stephen Wilson and Carson King from West Virginia. Row number 13, starting 25th, is Nick Robinson. 26th on the grid is Jack Coyne. In row 14, starting in the 27th position, is Colton Salick. And 28th, out of Central Michigan, is Stone Schaefer. Final drivers in the top 30 are Ryan Kendrick and Blake Bottoms.
Then it's Northern Arizona University-based driver Trey Normile. He'll start alongside one Kenneth Talbot in row 16. Row 17 features Colson Phelps He'll start alongside the UCCS-based driver of Lake Kinman. Then it's Edwin Afore, who will start row 18 alongside Sean Jensick. Then, rounding out the final 4 drivers is Aiden Doyle, Ricky Paz, who is representing Aprezo. Then, the final row of drivers on the field. Today's grid is all set to go, James. Entertaining to say the very least. Action-packed is expectations. Your launch XG race analysis, 60 miles per hour. The pit road speed, 60 laps, 150 miles. Pit road delta, 17 seconds. With fixed setups, keep in mind the fuel window, 34 to 37 laps, James.
And for those who are unaware, a fixed setup means that each and every one of these trucks that are also seen in the NASCAR Camper World Truck Series had the exact same setup underneath their cars. So everybody essentially has the same truck to work with. The only difference is the manufacturer. But these are the best drivers out of 262 drivers in 192 unique schools that registered in the Time Attack feature, part of the iRacing UI, for this eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. So you had almost 250, over 250 plus, and almost 200 schools take part. The top 40 modifiers are here to duke it out, and we're going to give away a ton of scholarship money tonight. $4,500 on the line for this race alone, part of the $13,500 we'll be giving away this spring in our first 3 races in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. We're glad you're with us here on iRacing as we get set to go green flag racing from the virtual World Center of Racing. Pace car pulls off and green flag unfurls from the hands of Barney the Flagman, and we are underway with the season opener of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague from Daytona. A good jump from the bottom there for Santiago Tires, who immediately scoots ahead by maybe a truck length or 2. He's got Daniel Buttafuoco in Joe, Dylan all to the inside. First side-by-side battle is Reese Bayham out of Auburn, and RCC's Alex Kalinick's fighting for position on the inside.
And as expected, the bottom line, expect to be dominant early on, James. Lots of drivers being fairly patient is the expectation. Was talking with some of the competitors leading into tonight. Some of their game plans to stay towards the back. Wait to see how things play out. Others group up with those who may have the more sim racing experience compared to some of the others. But it's going to be one thing. Who's going to be the first lap leader this time?
Answer to that question, how about Reese Bayham? So any of the War Eagle fans out there will appreciate that. He's got Auburn up front as they cross the track for the first time. But you're going to see these lines move and shift and change. That's part of the nature of the draft here at Daytona. Of course, you work behind another truck. You have less air resistance in the front end. It means you can go a little bit faster. But when you repeat that and add 40 other trucks into the equation almost, it changes the dynamics significantly. So it's not necessarily a straightforward equation that you're working with.
Exactly, and there's so many variables you have to consider with Daytona, especially if you're a newcomer, because when it comes to super speedway racing, it's not just about being the best driver per se. It's about being able to manage the lines, knowing strategy, knowing how to get your lanes picked out, how to get to pit road, how to be able to avoid any potential trouble, how to position yourself for the right moment at the right time to take advantage of some of the mistakes. You need to essentially work in terms of a chess match of sorts.
Take a moment to go on board Colson Phelps. Could be lots of fun to see how these drivers get to navigate from their own perspectives. This is similar to the view that Phelps will see throughout the race. You see his rig and his setup there on the bottom right portion of your screen, so you get a good sense of what he's working with. This camera moves a little bit, and it shows the banking of Daytona, just how steep the corners are, especially in turns 1, 2, 3, and 4. 31 degrees of banking there, Justin.
Yes, indeed, and a lot of banking in turn means a lot of high speeds. Drivers running upwards down the end of the straightaways of 190 miles per hour today. And when you're at the back of grouping such as this is, I think he just thumbs up to us a little bit there. He knows he's on camera. He knows what's at stake here for these drivers.
Shuffle through the field now. This is Dylan Alt, a little bit further up the field, based out of Sacramento, California, and he's near the front. Has a good view of your leaders here, and has a good view of how the runs are going to change from the bottom and the top, depending on where they are on the racetrack. You'll see that outside line slide back a little bit in the corners, that they'll get good runs of momentum on corner exit, so you should see them pull even with the inside line down the straightaways.
See that right there from Dylan Alt. See the right side with Bayham in particular. You just get that better push coming off the exit speed-wise, and it picks you up.
Now on board with Ricky Paz out of Valparaiso in Indiana. He's got VR, one of the first drivers I've seen in this series working a VR headset, and that's an option if you like to race and get really immersed into it. Should be a lot of fun.
It's worth noting, you see each school represented with their logos on their hoods for tonight's action. You see when it comes to Ricky, looking like he's taking the thought process of, I want to stay away from potential trouble. He, Colton Salick, Aiden Doyle, trying to keep away in case packs such as this start to get a little bit more antsy. That's something we've seen in the past.
Get a good look here at this full pack coming through, and again, you can see so many different schools represented on the hoods of these trucks. Just about every driver in this field has whatever school they're representing tonight on front and center of their machines, so you get a good sense of who's racing for what institution as we progress, not only throughout tonight, but throughout the opening 3 races.
Exactly, and brings that school pride for each of these respective programs. You have Auburn, as mentioned, on the high side. You have UNC Charlotte trying to battle on the inside. Remember seeing some of the paint schemes, too, on social media, such as for the Ohio Bobcats that's running outside row 2. Currently have a lot of beautiful schemes and a lot of different color palettes in turn. In fact, some Canadian schools heading towards the front, like the University of Toronto Scarborough there.
I'm going to let you be the expert on those. Justin Prince, our good friend north of the border, so you get a good chance to see some more of these schools. We're going to slide over to the 3 truck of Hagen Johnson, who's got our Coca-Cola on board, riding with Clemson University, the Tigers. Worth noting, potentially, that 3 truck of Hagen Johnson has a fellow Atlantic Coast Conference friend, or maybe foe, ahead of him in Thomas Toomey in line. Wonder if they might get the opportunity to work together, given that affiliation over the course of the evening. But again, lots of schools represented. UNC Wilmington in the mix, Charlotte in the mix, Auburn in the mix, Ohio in the mix, so many different places. And so cool to finally see universities represented here on a scale in iRacing that we haven't had the chance to see up until now.
Yeah, and it just showcases the diversity when it comes to the iRacing stock car community in terms of where a lot of its drivers come from, especially with those coming up through the collegiate ranks. And many of the top talents go full-time schoolwork, do full-time schoolwork, I should say, while also racing on the sim and trying to rise up through those ranks. We mentioned drivers like Dylan Alt with his experience, for example. There's a lot of levels of talent there, James, and a lot of college programs, especially a lot of those up front, are starting to really realize the importance of this.
Flying through here, we've got another on board for you. This time it's with Alexander Russell, who currently rides in the 11th position from Madison College. Another good view of the front, working his way just inside the top 10, and I would say in a decent position. The top 10, I think, is about the edge of where you want to be if you're trying to control this race from the front, because as you mentioned earlier, Justin, there are 2 general schools of thought. You either want to be up near the front or towards the back to avoid all the madness.
Exactly, and for example, you have Blake Bottoms, who's looking for the visor cam, for example, 22nd position, and was talking, for example, with the truck just in front. And Athena Leclerc, who is, for full disclosure, part of where I had a journalism diploma graduate from in 2014, St. Clair College. Amongst those drivers, the thought process was stick with drivers like Santiago Tiros, like a Reese Bayham, like a Dylan O, knowing how the experience levels are. For others, they want to try and wait to see if anything gets busy Hornets Nest-wise, as we take a look now from 13th.
Mentioned Thomas Toomey earlier, the Virginia Cavalier, racing in front of the Clemson Tiger, Hagen Johnson. Toomey currently scored in 12th, and another driver using the VR option, which if you really want to get immersed into your sim and into iRacing, a lot of fun to hop on VR. Also, to your right, Stephen Wilson, who's got experience at the top level of eNASCAR in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series.
I know he was pumped up, for example, too, when it comes to this competition and having a chance to be able to help earn some scholarship funding for his tuition, because every little bit counts, right, James? And goes the long way to helping pay your tuition, whether you're out of state tuition and trying to pay for room and board as well, or whether you're even going to your local college. Every bit matters.
In-state, out-of-state, in-province, out-of-province, because you're right, we do have Canadian schools represented in this field as well. But I guess in Steven's case, it helps that his truck is usually black to begin with in the Coke series, because it means he doesn't have to change it all that much to match the black found in the University of Iowa, the Hawkeyes, where he attends school, and representing them well. Top 15 at the moment for Steven. We're going to ride on board with Steven and get another on board for you, courtesy of our friends at Logitech G. Seems like every time we get Stephen Wilson on camera, he gets better at waving at us. These waves get a little bit more extended as he tries to fight for Iowa and fight through the middle of this pack. Now jumping up to the outside. So lane switch there for Stephen Wilson, who's going to take it 3 wide and go to the outside here of, I believe, Anthony Keys, the University of Toronto machine, or at least potentially try to make that third line work, but it's not quite there yet, I think, Justin.
The question is, though, who's going to be willing to go up there, James? Because if he can get enough numbers, say 4 or 5, I think you can make it work. And it seems Wilson getting really antsy for the sophomore in business. He's got some help from one of the Clemson trucks, meanwhile, though that may be willing to get that to work, as well as one more truck jumping up. 3 drivers trying to work top.
How about that? So we are properly going to go 3 wide. It's Jack Coyne as we go on board in the middle of all of this with the George Mason driver in the 4 truck. That's Jackson Shipley out of Springfield, Virginia, and he is dead center of everything. So I doubt there's a much better perch to watch all this unfold than from atop the roof here.
And this is where you take a deep breath as a competitor. Hope there is not a major mistake. No one slides up in the middle of the corner. But you can already see, even he can tell, that middle line is starting to drop back, losing momentum, starting to side draft each other a little bit. It seems as though with the trends recently, James, you want to be at the very top or the very bottom. Right now, the very top is starting to wake up.
Oh, that could get a little bit hairy. Check up there on that outside lane. I suspect there may have been somebody stacking up just ahead of the driver as we go on board with Christina Ryan, who is dead center of everything now in that middle lane racing for the Bobcats of Ohio University. And Ryan in a solid position now. You see that outside line break up. So I wonder, JP, if something must have happened up there, because I see even Wilson's dropped down to the bottom too.
I think that's because Payer may have scraped the wall down the backstretch. And here's the thing. You make a major mistake in that top line, lose yourself momentum, you're going to end up losing friends and quickly. They'll get it shuffled about. But keep this in mind, too. There is 2 women in the field for this event to start off the series' history, James. Ryan is amongst them.
Ryan, one of the two. And I think also worth noting, as we saw everything play out on the onboards, we saw that outside line check up, but I think it underscores just how difficult it is to see things happen in front of you, because that incident only happened maybe 3 or 4 trucks ahead of where we were, but you couldn't really see what happened. You just saw the trucks checking up in front of you. And that's about what it's like for the drivers. You know, you may have somebody wrecking 2-3 trucks ahead of you, and it's going to be really, really tough to see because you're right up on top of everybody. As we now take a look at the prize pool that is available for these drivers in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. Again, $13,500 in scholarship money to be awarded over the course of the first 3 races here at Daytona, then at Charlotte in March and Watkins Glen in April. $4,500 per event. Your winner's taking home $3,000. Runner-ups taking home $1,000, and third place taking home $500. Meanwhile, if you want to stay in tune with all the latest news and updates from eNASCAR, grab your phones out, grab your digital devices out, scan the QR code, and sign up today for all the information from our friends at NASCAR and iRacing, the official simulation partner of NASCAR. A little bit further back in the fields here, I believe we are on board with Anthony Keys of the University of Toronto in Canada, who's just behind Hagan Johnson for Clemson. And you've got tons of stuff to work through here. He's got a whole host of trucks, it seems, from even though he's only hiding in the 15th position.
Yeah, the management international business student just currently amongst those, just waiting for the lines to pop up even more so to shuffle ahead, I think. You can already tell there's a lot of space being given as well, James, and when you give that much amount of gap towards the truck in front of you, that's usually a sign you're expecting either something to happen towards that front, or you're just trying to make sure you don't get too close in case there's a massive checkup. Just trying to be there to react in case these drivers in front start to get really, really hectic.
At this point, yes. At later points in this race, you will also see trucks back up in order to gain momentum and get a run. That's sort of how Steven Wilson was able to create that third line a little bit earlier. He backed up and then was able to suck up to the rear end of the truck ahead of him and then dart to the outside because he had more momentum, had more speed, was able to create that third lane. Someone is going to try that towards the end of this race as we try and figure out who's going to win this first race in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series, powered by NACE Starleague.
And it's worth noting, you see right there a bit of damage as they passed by the first lap truck of the race. Jake Cummings, who tried to move towards the bottom line, stayed towards the back, couldn't keep the draft. Wilson does have a bit of damage that'll impact him a bit, and it's worth noting, in practice before the race, James, drivers attempted bump drafting and figuring out if that would work. And that's going to be even a fine line. And a fine line in turn to be able to make work, because if you aren't picture perfect and pixel perfect in terms of your marks, in terms of where you're pushing, that could spell trouble. And that's why I think some of the drivers as well are given that space so they don't accidentally give a bump draft and hook.
About time to go on board with Reese Bayham, one of the Tigers in this field out of the Auburn University camp in the Southeastern Conference, who has been in control of that high lane alongside Santiago Tires for a good chunk of this race so far, as we work lap 21 of 60, already a third of the way through proceedings in the opening round of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague.
And I've always liked seeing Reese and how he drives, because I've seen him on the sim for a few years now. Usually he is very strong on the super speedways and is relied upon by the groups and friends he's with. Takes a lot of pride with the program he's with as well, James, especially the rivalry in state, you can say, between the Crimson Tide and the Tigers.
Careful, JP. Them's fighting words.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And plenty of good rivalries throughout. We'll see if any good rivalries pop up over the course of the next 3 races, but it wouldn't be college without a few good rivalries in Jackson, right? Because you've got a whole host of Auburn and UNC Charlotte, or Charlotte rather, the Charlotte 49ers out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Santiago Tires still in control of this, but worth noting, because as we start to get towards the middle of this race, I'm beginning to think about pit stops reasonable to believe that Santiago and Reese, because they've been leading these trains, might have burned a little bit more fuel. So they may need to come in a little bit sooner than some of the drivers that have been riding the back of these trains. And you see these two lines that have formed and stayed pretty consistent, with the exception of Stephen Wilson's 3-wide move throughout the majority of this race. If you're back in the pack here, you can save a little bit more fuel and come in a little bit later than some of the drivers up front.
To simplify and explain that in terms, if you're up at the very front, you're likely going full throttle, if not 90%, and or going full throttle but dragging the brakes a touch to make sure you don't get too big an advantage off the corners, for example, which can open up the door for the second truck in line to jump up to the top and try and pass by. If you're in this middle grouping, for example, you're amongst those running maybe 70 to 50% on the throttle. There's a lot of draft impact with these trucks, meaning if you're full throttle, you very quickly are going to close up quickly to the truck in front. So that's where that fuel saving comes in, and where some of the checkups in play can be. It's a fine margin there too to know how much you can play with the throttle and how much you can try and drag the brake.
Dragging the brake. Wild in theory, but it actually does work. We'll see how many drivers get the chance to use that over the course of the second half of the race. But for now, we're going to take a quick commercial break and be back on the other side with more action from the virtual Daytona International Speedway in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague.
We've learned to savor the moments that were always there. And they never tasted this good.
There's a reputation on the track, being built this very minute.
He's made his own history!
One that embraces the crazy,
Oh my goodness!
the fast, and the unpredictable.
Everett's gonna win it at the line!
That looks into the eye of the competition and screams, bring it. Loud enough so the whole world will see it coming. I am the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I am NASCAR.
SCW is the official technology VAR of NASCAR. Whether you're looking to outfit the office with the latest technology from your favorite brands like HP, Lenovo, or Logitech, or you're wanting to race like the pros with a full cockpit on iRacing, just like the SCW sponsored driver Taylor Hurst. SCW is where America gets IT. Shop now at scw.com.
Hey, can we show you something?
I'll allow it.
Something new.
I love surprises.
I mean, really new. Like a new car.
Well, this looks fun.
And a new schedule.
Hang on. We're keeping the road courses, right?
Yeah, Chase. We got you. And a new legacy in the making.
Hey, I just want to race.
New garages to call home.
Vamos, amigos.
And a whole new reason to love what we love.
Burnouts. Winning. Racing.
I am NASCAR.
Welcome back to coverage of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague, where we're under our first yellow flag of the evening. Tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official fan refreshment of eNASCAR. By Logitech G. Through design, engineering, and a love of driving games, Logitech G takes racing simulation to another level. Logitech G, the official wheel and pedals of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. By SCW. Whether you're looking to outfit the office or race like the pros, SCW is where America gets IT. Shop now at scw.com. And by Placey, the official racing chair of eNASCAR. Take a look at the replay here, Justin Prince, and show you what happened coming out of turn 4. It was a big mess, took in a lot of fast trucks.
And the 3-wide started to build up towards the later stages right there. Watch towards this very top, because this is where the bobbles come in. You see right there, mistimed touch from the Ohio University truck, and it's the big one. Coming towards the halfway mark, at least 10, 15 trucks absolutely demolished. Just no space to go in that situation. But again, you bump in the corners, you usually pay. And as a result, a vast majority of the field is demolished.
It was Christina Ryan who got into Reese Bayham, and you're right. It's very difficult to bump in the middle of the corner, and especially when you're 3 wide like that, because the noses and bumpers of these trucks aren't necessarily entirely parallel. There's a little bit of curve to the front ends of these trucks, and you get into somebody the wrong way, it can turn them around very quickly, especially when you're traveling in excess of 165, 170 miles an hour.
Yep, and I want to say this too. We mentioned the connections with St. Clair College. This is Leclerc, who is racing from their 15,000 square feet esports hub today. And look at the C's party. Just absolutely amazing to avoid 5 trucks in a row wrecking in front. That is very tight, to say the very least. Just inches from contact, James. No damage for Athena Leclerc.
First instinct, if you can get the opportunity, go low and get low before the track washes away all the incident, because most of these wrecks do eventually come back down to the apron. But if you can get low enough in time, you can avoid it all like Leclerc did. He's currently scored in the 8th position and likely to gain a few spots as a result of that incident, and has a clean truck too, so that's going to be really, really important to maintain, especially as we move towards the back half of this race. Other thing to note here, just as I look at things and try and do a little bit of math, could be pit stops too, as we remind you all that if you want to find out more information on how to start your iRacing career and potentially race yourself in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague, log on to iRacing.com today.
Don't forget as well, 40% off is available for new members currently on iRacing. And it's the perfect time to join the service too, James, because lots can come into direction. There's a lot of momentum on iRacing in turn, and a lot of great people, including some of these drivers you can race against.
Get the opportunity to go up against some of the top talents here in this eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. I also mentioned we may be done with pit stops. If my math is right for most of these drivers, we should be sitting on 34 laps, I think right on the nose, when we get to the checkered flag, if we go the scheduled distance. That could be lots of fun to keep track of.
Yeah, it's going to be tight on fuel. Expect a little bit of saving, I think, James, to make sure of things. But if there's a caution, essentially most of the field likely can make it. It really depends how many green with checkers down the line, for example, that you want to factor for. And you also have to factor in, you never know what's going to happen after the restart.
Part of the flagman with the green flag once again. It is Daniel Buttafuoco from Rutgers University in control of this field, but with damage on his truck, and I doubt he's going to hold this lead for long, because even though Santiago Gutierrez doesn't have a lot of help at the moment, he's got a fast truck for the Charlotte 49ers, and he's got help coming on the outside very quickly as they get back to speed into turn 2. Watch this run on the outside as here comes Santiago Gutierrez. That outside line now really beginning to get organized and really beginning to push forward.
And just being patient. Keep in mind, though, that he does have a bit of damage, James, that's impacting his speed on the spoiler, so that's going to hold up that top line a touch.
Just a hair. Very few drivers got out of that incident a few laps ago without some form of damage. But to the point that you made earlier, for the drivers that were sitting at the back waiting for something like that to happen, what kind of dividends did they get paid off? Fears there might be trouble there.
A big-time trouble in the heart of the pack. And no caution yet. We stay green for now, but some of the drivers are still trying to start each other. Keys, though, just got hooked into the heart of the pack.
And now the yellow flag comes out. We'll see if we can get a sense of where the yellow finally did come, because I saw about 2 or 3 incidents throughout the corner that were taking place before the yellow actually was thrown. So we'll have to backtrack and see where the yellow was actually triggered. But a lot of confusion in the middle of the pack there, Justin.
Yeah, just when you have any sort of major checkup like that in the corner, it just gets to where you need to be picture perfect in terms of your timing too. And it just seemed once everything cleared up, James, that's where everyone was still trying to sort out, okay, who do we get back on the track? Because there were 3 trucks stuck on the apron after the initial incident. Just not enough time for Keys to let them back up out of 2. And it's going to be the perfect example here. This is Russell. He's one of the trucks mentioned, James, who got pinched under the apron with that massive checkup up the road. And eventually you have to come back on the track. And the problem is, he sees the checkup right there, tries to come up. That's where Keys is.
Russell there into Anthony Keys, and Keys going around is what eventually brings out our second yellow flag of the evening. This will be a big help for any of the drivers who felt like they were on the edge of the pit window. You burn less fuel under caution than you do under green flag racing. So for those who were a little bit concerned about making it, this will be a big help to them. It'll make it easier for them to get to the end without burning all of their fuel out of their fuel tanks.
And you have to make sure, too, at the same time, James, especially if you're a newcomer, make sure you're at least in 4th gear, maybe clutch and coasting, if not, turning the motor off for a little bit here and there, depending on your preference. That every bit helps. If you stay, say, in 2nd gear, that does burn a lot more, even under caution, compared to being able to stay in the 4th gear. As some of the drivers will take the chance here to top off who are around the time of the incident.
And towards the back of the pack as well. Not a bad strategy move, I think. If you're towards the tail end of the lead lap, there's not really any penalty that you're going to take, especially in terms of track position by coming down pit road. But you're right, Justin. If you run at a lower RPM and a higher gear, you don't rev the engine as much, and you don't end up in near as much of a fuel burn mode, JP.
Absolutely. And one of the drivers who's been having a pretty interesting day so far is Steven Wilson. He is amongst those getting some repairs done. Steven joins us now. Steven, how would you describe your experience in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series and its debut tonight?
Yeah, it was definitely something. We were kind of in a box. I started 23rd, so I had to try and make some moves to get up front. And we were doing pretty good. Got up to the front row on the outside, and just got in that big wreck. Looked like I was really close to getting through it. Pretty damaged, I think. The car is pretty done, so I don't know if I'll go back out at this point. I just got a little more damage from something else that just happened too. So, but yeah, it was a good time, and hopefully we'll come back at the next race a little stronger.
Of course, you're at the University of Iowa, and how about we cheer you up a little bit? Do you know this fight song for the University of Iowa?
I kind of know it, but I could not do the whole thing right now.
Saying what you know. How about we let you get back to the repairs? Thank you, Steven.
Okay. Thanks.
Steven Wilson, everybody.
We'll let the other loyal Iowans handle this again there as we carry on and get set to rock and roll here. Gonna have a few more drivers to talk to you under the course of the yellow, Justin.
Yes, indeed. Dylan Alt, for example, amongst those who does have high-level experience at California State University, Sacramento. Dylan, you're amongst those who has been towards the front most of the race. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Honestly, I don't think my damage is hurting me too much. I feel like I can get to the front, or during this, when we actually go green, I'm going to try my hardest to get to the front and try to get back to my teammates, Daniel and Santiago. Yeah, I feel great right now.
And of course, representing your school here today, how does it feel to be able to have this opportunity to be able to represent your college program, especially as a freshman in mechanical engineering?
It's awesome. I don't honestly know what to say, because I'm still, I don't know. I have no idea what to say. I'm sorry.
I'll let you get back to the race because you're inside the top 10 for the restart.
Okay.
Dylan Alt inside the top 10, and wow, these drivers really focused, James, on the track.
And all, I think, get ready to get geared up because it's a very different race that we have now with so many trucks that took damage in either one of those two yellow flags. You've got a much smaller field of trucks that are clean that can go 100% full pace. That's going to be a big advantage to call it maybe the 15 to 20-ish by my count that look clean or relatively close to it. in this field as we'll get set to get the green flag coming to lap 34 of 60.
Nice and clean on the restart once again, it appears here, James. Santi on the bottom, able to work with Budafuoco at the moment.
Santi and Budafuoco moving forward. On the outside, it's Connor Hale working with Kenneth Talbot. That second truck on the outside lane. Grand Canyon University's got representation up at the front as well in the form of Derek Jennings, and everybody coming back to full song down the back straightaway at Daytona.
And this is a critical thing, knowing some of the drivers have damage, some of the drivers have clean trucks. That's important to try and keep count of, James, because you need to know which schools you're friends with, which schools you're rivals with, which drivers you can work with that are clean trucks, and which drivers can you trust. All that's going to be so critical, and we mentioned some of the drivers making moves. See the back of the grouping. We've seen Leclerc, for example. We have drivers like Doyle up 24 spots, Phelps up 27, 28 for Talbot. A lot of big movers as a result of the incidents. Here's some of the onboards. This is Budafuoco.
This is indeed Daniel Budafuoco out of Rutgers University, the Scarlet Knights out of Piscataway, New Jersey, as he controls this inside line and makes things happen at Daytona. The most impressive thing to me about Budafuoco is that he's got damage on the right front of his truck, and yet he's still able to maintain his pace for the most part. I figured that inside line might be at a little bit of a disadvantage as Connor Hale drops in front of him, but just with the way Budafuoco was running, you wouldn't notice it, Justin.
I'm actually surprised how well he's doing despite having a completely crunched in front nose. And it just shows, I think, a bit of the confidence drivers have with him, because while he's new to iRacing, has a lot of experience eNASCAR competition-wise, and he's made a lot of high-level friends in turn with the speed he showcased on the platform over the course of the past few months. Keep an eye on him for the rest of 2022, to say the very least, and the rest of his time of service.
Also, how about the driver leading the outside lane? Connor Hale out of Tidewater Community College, hailing from Virginia Beach, Virginia. He's a freshman majoring in business and flight training, so would it be fair to say that he's piloting the outside line here?
Pretty fair to say. I think you can really say when it comes to Connor Hale, absolutely, from Tidewater Community College. Here's some of the traffic we're talking about. How about some trouble for one of the West Virginia trucks there?
It's Carson King, who's down on the apron. Meanwhile, still door-to-door up at the front. Hale on top. Budafuoco down on the inside lane, and everybody just following them at the moment. This hasn't gotten as crazy as I think it will, because you're going to start to see drivers get a little bit more desperate. And that third line that we saw Steven Wilson develop early on in this race, I'll bet that comes back at some point between now and the end of this race. The question is when, as we find out what happened to Carson King here. We'll get a good look at a replay and see why exactly he was down on the apron to begin with.
Yeah, he is from Rocky Mount, Virginia, a senior in biometric systems engineering, and wow, bit of contact sending an additional truck there into the grass. That was around 21st position at the time, and that has lost them the draft and then some, James. They are outside of the main grouping, but the lead pack, they're 3 wide already with Connor Hale shuffled.
Speaking of losing the draft, Connor Hale is all by himself on that high line, and he was up at the front of that outside line just a moment ago, but he's buried deep into the pack. You can see him there just on the outside. He's got one truck on the apron trying to keep afloat, and they will just about get around to that. Was Sean Yensick, who is in trouble at the University of Rhode Island.
Yeah, Jensick getting some big-time breaks, let's put it that way, from Russell in some big-time checkup ability. And you see the lap traffic going to cause problems. Hale barely got it at the top line in time.
That was really, really close from Alex Kolonix there. Everybody had to check up, and Hale had to duck in quickly and just about jam on the brakes at 170 plus miles an hour to make sure he didn't run over a Kolonix green machine. But back to 2x2 for the moment. I almost think the drivers are going to take a breather here and just sort of ride for a bit before they start mentally setting up for these final 20 laps. Because if you're anywhere from about 10th on back, you're going to have to start thinking about how you want to get to the front and what sort of moves you need to make in order to at least be in position to win the race come the white flag.
We've already seen it a couple times. Drivers are going to be willing to try and dart up that middle. The reason they're keeping this space is a bit of the side draft effect. But don't be surprised if there are major checkers again in the bottom, like we've seen a couple times, that someone decides, okay, it's time for me to go, darts it right there, immediately tries to make the pass. You just have to time it up right. At the same time, you also need to find a bit of help willing to go with you for the move. You can't get yourself being the only truck in that lane.
And that's the tricky thing about restrictor plate racing here at Daytona and at Talladega Superspeedway as well. You can't really ever win a race alone because you need the draft. You need the aerodynamic advantage of having other cars with you as we go on board with Daniel Carter to get to the front, to give yourself a chance to win these races. And yet at the same time, there's a small luck aspect that comes into it as well. There's certainly skill that you need, but it's not exclusively one or the other. They have to work in tandem in order for you to end up in victory lane here.
Indeed, and see some of this traffic really started to become a factor, just staying up at the top line on the speed, but look at that. Someone just got shuffled out with that change in the line.
Colson Phelps from Iowa State University, the Cyclone way up top there. And it's now Dylan Alt who's taking control of that outside lane from California State University, Sacramento State, as it's more commonly known. He now in control of that high line and potentially looking to make a run on Kenneth Talbot and Daniel Buttafuoco for the race lead.
Keep in mind, though, both those drivers, in fact, the first three trucks on the top line have fairly decent damage. Alt on the door, spoiler for the 88 and the 83. That's going to hold up that line a little bit, and how quickly they're going to be able to build up the run. The pack speeds have gone down a couple miles per hour with some of the drivers with damage leading the groups.
I don't see any damage, though, on Talbot's truck out of the University of Alabama at Huntsville. So have a feeling he may be one of the best trucks suited to lead this group, because you look back, especially in that outside lane, there's spoiler damage on the first, 1, 2, 3 trucks, I think, behind Dylan Alt, just looking at it.
Yeah, I think Alt, out of the drivers up at the top 4 in particular, I think he's got the least worries. But at the same time, he's got a good reputation on the sim, James, and that's going to really be beneficial.
Definitely. And I think the other thing that's important to note, we saw it a little bit with Kyle Busch in the Daytona 500 earlier this week, you don't necessarily have to have a completely clean truck in order to be an effective pusher. If you sit behind someone that has a clean vehicle, that doesn't have any aerodynamic disadvantages, you can push them as well, because they take the air off of your nose, and it's almost as if your car acts as if it doesn't have any damage at all.
Exactly. And it's really worth noting, if you're one of those drivers indeed who have that, you're great as the pusher, not the pushee, so to speak. Hence why see drivers like Daniel Carter doing a really solid job at that mark. Keep in mind as well, when it comes to this main grouping, about 19 trucks have a chance here, with about 16 to go this time by. And anything can happen, to say the very least, because some of these drivers, as far back as Normile, for example, with his damage holding on to the draft, could be able to charge ahead depending on how they shuffle.
And let's go with our SCW on board with Trey Normile at our Northern Arizona University. Beginning to get down to it, beginning to see some movement there on that outside line. Dylan Alt tried to move. I'm not sure if Blake Kinkinnon was ready to go with him. They got stacked up on that outside a little bit and wiggled, and they got a little bit stuck there, JP.
And keep in mind, $3,000 in scholarship dollars going to the winner here, $1,000 to second, third place, $500. And that goes a long way to helping pay for college tuition and various other expenses. That's going to be critical, and that's going to be a lot of drivers' minds here, James, knowing you could cover potentially a whole semester depending on which program you're with based on how you do.
A lot of good scholarship money up for grabs. These first 3 races will give away $13,500. So we'll see who grabs that over the course of the spring. But for now, back to the front. Yet again, it's Alt. Yet again, it's Talbot. But Fuoco is there. Kinkinnon is there. And then Daniel Carter on the outside and Santiago Gutierrez on the inside. Those are the third trucks on the outside and the inside lanes, respectively.
I think this is now the calm before the storm, so to speak, where you're waiting for somebody to make that move, but you also don't want to be that driver who makes the first move and then gets caught out. If you make the move too early, you're going to the very back. You make the move too late, you're likely not winning the race, and you might go to the back in the final laps. So it's towards that staring match where you're waiting patiently to say, will someone go on the third line with me, please?
And I look very specifically at Connor Hale, who I believe the pink and white car, I think is the fourth truck and the outside line. Remember, he was the one who got shuffled into that third line and got sent all the way to the back of the pack earlier in this race. If there's anybody who's got experience with how that can work against you, and anyone who might be able to turn that into an asset in the closing stages of this race, have to believe that we're going to take a good long look at the driver racing for Tidewater Community College of Virginia.
Long-time sim racer as well, and someone just trying to play patient after picking up some of the damage earlier. And I wouldn't be surprised absolutely with how he's been able to fix that truck, how he's been able to keep himself at the front in turn, that he might be one of those darting out and darting on out in turn. Keep in mind as well, look at the runs that are built up down the backstretch in particular. You time it up right where you get to a preferred group off the turn, you might be able to clear by for the race lead if you have enough help.
You saw Kinkinnon from the University of Colorado Springs get into the back of Dylan Alt coming out of turn 3. You saw how they had to give up the run because they couldn't get locked up in the middle of the corner. You see now as they come through these chutes back into the corners how they gain momentum on the outside because on the straight, as we come back through the corners, it's the inside line that gets the momentum and pulls forward by just a little bit. And back and forth and back and forth and back and forth they go. But that's the nature of racing at plate tracks.
A little bit darty there because of a bump draft coming off the corner. Carter hit the back end of Kinkinnon, and that really sent him squirrely. If your driver's like Santiago Gutierrez, you're keeping a close eye on that top line after seeing that.
On board now with Santiago Gutierrez, the Charlotte 49er, originally from El Paso, Texas. Second truck on the inside. He's been up at the front for just about the entirety of this race. And you look at drivers that have experience in this field, very few can match up with what Santi's got coming into tonight.
You can see just waiting for that opportunity. But keep in mind, Santi, with 10 laps to go, coming around here, with a lot of experience, one of those who is one of the seniors for his college program, looking to try and build connections to motorsports. And his program, keep in mind, and his school is known for that, for being, of course, in Charlotte. And that's going to be critical for Santi to do well in this type of action. And he's built up a lot of connections in turn. I spoke with them in the real world and sim world because in part of that school.
Think of a lot of mechanics and a lot of engineers that have come out of Charlotte's program. But a reminder that if you want all the latest news and updates from eNASCAR, take your phones out, take your digital devices out, and scan that QR code, and you can sign up today, courtesy of our friends at eNASCAR and iRacing, the official simulation partner of NASCAR. inside of 10 laps to go and still about 20 trucks or so at the front of this field in the season opener for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. You're starting to see that outside line get antsy, and there they go. Can get into the high line to make it 3 wide at the front of the field as they go through 3 and 4.
Don't know if they have the numbers, though. Just 2 trucks up there, and everybody's trying to ditch them for that move. Kincannon does not have any friends outside of Connor Hale willing to try and make that work. That's exactly what Alt was waiting for.
I don't think Alt minds that. If anything, I get the sense that Alt was thinking that Kincannon might have been trying to push him a little bit too much. We saw the rear end of the 40 truck get a little bit squirrely, and there's another bump now as they continue to try and shove Alt to the front. I'm sure he loves the help, but again, it's really, really tough to do that on the corners as we go on board here at the University of Rhode Island driver. This is Sean Yensick.
Yensick, the junior for mechanical engineering, having to be careful here as the back end of the middle row having some help, and he just lost his escape route because the 66 of Toomey also just closed up the gap. So if you're Sean, maybe try and dart to the outside. Keep your eyes close and open, though, because anything can happen with how close they're trying to bump.
Generally speaking, and this is the double-edged sword that Sean and everybody else in this lane is working with, the middle lane tends to be the fastest when you're going 3 wide, but it's also the most dangerous because if anything happens to you on the inside or the outside as they get ready to approach lap traffic, you have very little room to escape. We'll see if they clear the lap traffic here down the backstretch with ease.
Oh, this is trouble. 4 wide with the lap traffic, and now some drivers trying to use the run. There they go.
Trouble on the back straightaway as they spin and crash down into the grass and into the infield at Daytona. We'll get our 3rd yellow flag of the evening, and it was all the lap traffic that had everybody bunched up there. Justin Prince, that triggered it, and everybody tried to take advantage of the chaos and move into spaces where there just wasn't enough room for more than 1 truck to fit.
And I seen that coming the second I seen the 3 trucks lined up on the bottom side, because obviously the job is for the race leaders to make the pass and make it cleanly. But it's so difficult to do when you're already 3 wide in the first place, and if you're lap trucks, where do you go? It's basically to pick the 2 of the lesser evils, and unfortunately McKibben rubs the wall. Some drivers go bumping 3 wide, and in turn, as some of the drivers still try to shuffle, it almost turned to 4 wide it seemed, and then the troubles ensued.
It doesn't matter. You get 3 wide, you get 4 wide on the back straightaway here at Daytona. Chances are someone's not going to react to you the right way. You're going to expect someone to go left, and they're going to go right, or right, and they'll go left, vice versa. And you just end up sort of crossing lanes, and that's where the contact happens. And then given how tightly bunched everybody is in these situations, that's when these wrecks go from 2 trucks to 3 trucks to 5 trucks to 10 trucks, just like that.
And keep in mind, Talbot is the race leader with all this. He may have been the luckiest out of anybody there because he did not get any damage from that. In fact, I think he just avoided getting turned here. This is right alongside him. Alt wiggles down, contact right above with Kincannon, and there they go. Just a truck length right behind him.
It was Kincannon and Hale that got together. They were the ones who had jumped to the outside to try and make that lane work. And I almost wonder if they tried a little bit too hard to make it work. They got into each other, bounced back into the rest of the field. And that's what sent just about maybe 10 or 15 trucks spinning down to the inside and shaking up the front end of this field significantly with a handful of laps to go. There are a few trucks that are down on pit road, but at this point, you'd like to try and be able to stay out if you can, just to maintain the track position. You start anywhere within the top 10, I think you've got a decent shot at least putting yourself in contention to win this race.
Absolutely agree with you. And at this point, fuel mileage or not, concern-wise, you're staying out on the track. You're hoping that you make it through any number of GWCs. You make it to the finish, no problem. The cautions are going to absolutely benefit that in turn. There are a couple drivers who topped off, mind you, like Daniel Carter, who have 5 laps more fuel and took a minute of damage repair, who is second. As we take a look at a second look, what happened here?
Another shot here of the incident. This, I believe, is on board Jack Coyne, who is right behind Hale and Kincannon. You see the contact down the middle of the back straightaway right there. There's Kincannon getting turned. There's Hale turned. And again, another, well, almost parting the seas case. It was almost clear for Coyne, and then everybody behind him couldn't get checked up in time, and he got turned.
I believe that was Nick Robinson's purple and yellow truck that got into the back end right there. And it's that kind of case where you just need to be able to check up in time to be able to avoid the trouble. And you have to also hope everyone is able to check up in time. And that's always a tough balance and turn.
But again, we go back to, if you remember the incident where we saw the stack up that got one of our trucks early on, I forget, I believe it may have been Jake Cummings who got turned around.
Yes.
Coming into turn 3 at the beginning. You saw how difficult it was to see that from the onboard. And see how difficult it could be to see a wreck like that happen too, as we get the chance to chat with the Rutgers Scarlet Knight, Dan Budafuco.
Yes, indeed. And Dan, hello and welcome back to eNASCAR competition. You've been a front runner all day. How are you feeling coming to 3 to go?
I'm in a pretty solid position in 3rd place. I would say we're a good spot to play offensive. Just need a spot to open up top to try to make something happen. But I want to say a big thank you to everybody over at Rutgers. My mom for designing the car, a former Rutgers alumni, all my friends out there in the chat, and yeah, it's really cool. We have some damage on the right side, which was hurting us in the low lane, so we weren't able to really have that power. But I think I don't know if it'll matter too much in these last few laps, but I'm just gonna do what I can.
Good luck on the restart, Dan.
Thanks, bro.
Daniel Budafuco amongst the top 5 still. He's led 9 of the laps so far, James.
But not just a Scarlet Knight, but a second-generation Scarlet Knight, if you include his mother. There's an interesting tidbit. So for any fans of the State University of New Jersey, you've got a driver to cheer for, I think, pretty easily, and one that is in a very good position coming to the restart here. He'll fire off 3rd in this second truck on that inside lane, just behind Kenneth Talbot of the University of Alabama at Huntsville. On that outside line, you've got Daniel Carter, who's been really, really solid all race and should, I think, be able to put in a good run for City Polytechnic Institute.
Yeah, that bottom line, I think, is in a better truck condition, to say the least, in terms of the damage. But it's going to also be critical to keep an eye on those towards the back end of the top 10 who may have minimal damage or clean trucks. They may go for the charges.
Green flag back in the air, coming to 3 laps to go. You can already see some of these drivers trying to get to the high line to make something happen, but that only is going to open up room on the inside as they're going to wreck in the chute in between turns 1 and 2. And before we even get back to the corner, we'll go back under the yellow flag once again.
And I think basically, long story short, Phelps with his significant damage tried to get out of the way at first, and someone just seemed to get trapped there, James. Just not great timing as Toomey ends up getting hooked into the chute.
I think you're probably right about that. That to me looked like trucks that were just trying to get out of the way and not necessarily be a hindrance to some of the cleaner trucks that might have been behind them. But even then, that can get tricky, especially coming through the tri-oval, which even though this track maintains its width for a good portion of the lap, it always seems like the tri-oval and the area around it races just a little bit tighter.
And we'll take a look. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You already see 4 wide is not a great side at this point, and you can see the truck in the middle left part of the circuit squeezed there too, James, which didn't help the issue, but just not great timing.
It was Toomey, I believe, into Colson Phelps from Iowa State. Trouble there. Meanwhile, we do have a green-white checkered finish on our hands. We have 3 attempts to finish this race under a green flag. For those who are unfamiliar to the rule set, this is how this works. We'll take the green flag on the restart once we get everybody lined up. If we get the yellow flag before we come back to the start-finish line and get the white flag, which means we have 1 lap to go, then we'll throw the caution, we'll reset everybody, we'll reset the lap count to go back to 2 laps to go, and we'll try it again. We'll try that up to 3 times if we need to. If we get the white flag before we get any other flag after the restart, we will race around until the next flag ends the race, whether or not that's the yellow flag on the last lap or if they let them go all the way around to the checkered flag. So if we get the white flag, we're within a lap of being done at max. If we get a yellow before we get the white, we'll get another restart in, or 2 perhaps, to try and finish this race under green flag conditions.
I think the nerve levels are going to be high in turn, James, for that, first of all. And second, for many of the drivers, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go as quick as possible towards the front here, especially knowing they won't have time being the essence, so to speak. They'll have to, if they want a chance to be top 3, have to be picture perfect from the launch.
Perfect, and I think more importantly, aggressive, especially if you're towards the back half of this pack. I would expect that third lane to come in very quickly. I would expect more drivers to try and bump draft in places where you might not necessarily be so assured in your bump drafts earlier on in this race. You're going to take a few more risks, but you have to in order to get yourself near the front. So you could see bumping in the middle of corners, which if you do it right, it can work. It's just it's much harder to do it right and do it in a way that doesn't turn the truck ahead of you around than it is on the straightaways.
Exactly, and we've already seen a couple of times near incidents. And the reason for the caution flag was the contact coming to the short chute after the start and finish line of the trial. Colson Phelps now joins us. And Colson, what happened from your perspective there?
Yeah, so at the end there, I mean, I've just got heavy damage from the wreck before, and there's no way of knowing really how these cars are going to react with it. So our goal was to just stay out and hope that maybe something bad happened in front of us and that we could gain some spots and be there at the end still. And in second gear, I hit the gas and it just didn't go. I tried to get up out of the way. Unfortunately, blocked the West Virginia car, I believe. So that's on me. I'm just trying to be there if there's a wreck and see what happens.
And more on the positive note here, a very cool setup we're seeing here on screen. Talk us a little bit about your setup and where it's placed at and whatnot.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just in my college apartment here. See, I've got an ultra-wide curved monitor here. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. I've got my guy Ayrton Senna up here on the wall looking down on me. Didn't give me too much luck there on that last wreck, but beginning of the race was all pretty good, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I just like keeping it clean. Gives me a nice space to do my college work and race. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, good luck the rest of the way. Thank you very much, Colson.
Thank you.
Colson Phelps. Involved in that last incident, starting towards the top 12, in fact, James. That's how many drivers had to get damage repair.
Think about that. That Colson Phelps out of Iowa State in Ames, Iowa, was in the wall. It was in one of the most recent yellows, and now he's just on the edge of the top 10, albeit with a damaged race car. But he's got a chance. And at this point, and with the way some of these races can finish at Daytona, that might be all you need in order to have a shot at victory lane. Meanwhile, at the front, it's Kenneth Talbot for the University of Alabama at Huntsville and Daniel Buttafuoco for Rutgers University that will lead us to green on the inside and outside. It's our first attempt of 3 potential green-white checkers. We'll see whether or not we get the yellow or the white coming up within the next lap or so. Green flag back out. We're underway again at Daytona.
By the time they get towards turn 2, I think that's where the fireworks are really going to go off. Buttafuoco's been great off the launches so far. Talbot looking very consistent since getting this track position. Watch for drivers to dart out once we get to the back.
Look at the gap between Buttafuoco and Santiago Tires. What does Tires do on that outside line? Does he jump higher? Does he push Buttafuoco to the front? As you get a good shot of this field down the back straightaway, answer there is going to be the push, and there's a big block from Kenneth Talbot to try and keep that outside line at bay, but it didn't work. Buttafuoco's alongside, and they wreck further behind him to bring out the yellow flag, so we'll go to a second green-white checker.
Ricky Paz ended up getting turned around, trying to dart around as well to join some of those drivers up towards the top line. And that brings to a second green-white checkered. Keep in mind, Buttafuoco, I believe, may have gotten the scoring loop. That was after he tried to cover off Jack Coyne here with the 19 getting hooked off of him and some contact 4 wide.
Good look here at what happened towards the back. This is the Valparaiso drive for trouble for Ricky Paz, who got turned around in the back and spun right in the middle of turn 3 in the center of the racing line. So no choice for race control but to throw the yellow flag there. Going to give everybody an opportunity to reset at the front, but we saw a little bit of Buttafuoco's playbook already, and we saw a little bit of Talbot's playbook too. Talbot's not afraid to throw big blocks in order to try and control the front of this field.
Yeah, he's done it a couple times already, and we've seen as well right there. He knows what's at stake here, but now it's going to be even more difficult because while he's got the cleaner truck, will we have enough friends to work with to get around this 13 machine? Because while Buttafuoco's got that heavy damage, He's been able to line things up well with some of the bump drafts we've seen off the corner last time that really positioned himself well to get that run into turn 3.
And a reminder of what's at stake. Part of a $4,500 pool of prizes available for this specific race. Your winner tonight is getting $3,000 in scholarship money, $1,000 for second place, and $500 in scholarship money for third place. So there's a little bit of a difference between first and second and third, and I think there's plenty of incentive there to try and win this if you can. Never mind all the prestige that comes with being the first ever winner in this eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague.
Yeah, indeed. And here's the thing, too. You're seeing this right here. Fuel mileage is going to be concerned. Guess which trucks are going to be concerned about the fuel? 3 of the top 4. Budafoco, Talbot, and Tierrez, as we now bring one of the drivers, Thomas Toomey, who was involved in one of the incidents earlier, in VR. But here's the interesting thing. On that laptop that's to his left, first of all, how? Second, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It was a little unfortunate. We got caught up there in an incident on the restart. Can't really pass low without getting the black flag, so was forced to go high. Thankfully, didn't get too much damage, and the laptop works. It's one of the newer Lenovo Legions, has a 3080 and an i9 in it, and can run it with VR no problem. Can fit it in my backpack and take it to class at the end of the day.
So you actually do use that for class then?
Every now and then, yes. It's quite a powerful laptop to be doing any serious school work with or anything, but whenever I need to do some CAD renderings or anything, it's really nice to have.
So let's talk about that a little bit. You're a senior at Systems Engineering from San Diego at the University of Virginia. How are you feeling about this opportunity tonight to showcase your sim racing skills at the high level?
I'm really excited to support Virginia Motorsports and California as well. It's a really great thing that we're able to do this and get so much attention into sim racing, and I hope this really grows and takes off.
Once you get back to work here, coming to 1 to go, good luck.
Thanks, guys.
That was Toomey coming home right now in 13th position to the restart. As, interestingly enough, I noticed the wheel was over his head, actually, James.
Sometimes oversized wheels are the preference of drivers. You can, at the high levels, change out the size of your rims, and some drivers like to work with maybe a 15 or 16-inch rim. But the laptop there really got me. I actually started my iRacing career on a laptop, so it brings me back to some of my old glory days way back in the beginning. As we get a good look here at Daniel Budafoco, we noted pit strategy just a little bit there.
Listen in. You see that gauge? He's close on fuel. If we go to the third green light checker, James, he might not be able to make it.
We haven't had the chance to touch on it too much, but let's dig into it now, because some of these drivers, as I look through the top 10, everybody here has at least run 34 laps. Some drivers have run as much as 39 laps. Your window was 34 to 37 laps under normal green flag conditions. So the yellows have helped to a point, but we may see some drivers sputter out, and that could cause some chaos if they run out of fuel in front of this field.
Keep in mind, Talbot and Tierrez are also in the same situation. The 99 is also. Everybody else, I think, might be able to make it. Keep in mind, ninth on back, involved in some of the racing cautions. They have a lot more fuel. You look at the last lap. Some of these drivers haven't pit since before halfway.
Could be wide. We are coming to lap 66 of our originally scheduled 60, and I believe it is Derek Jennings and Connor O'Kresick who are the first that are good to go to the end on fuel, so that might be worth noting too. Second green white checker here though, back to green flag racing, but Budafoco and Talbot in control of this field once again.
Nice and clean on the restart, keeping an eye on that top line of the developments, and some drivers already going there, James.
Waiting to see what that outside line will do. We saw how quick Talbot was to make the block down the back straightaway on the last restart. This time, I think he's going to keep that gap a little bit tighter so they can't get the run, but it allows Budafoco and Daniel Carter to get a good run on that inside line and stretch out the lead by a truck length, or maybe call it a half.
Keeping an eye on Santiago Tierrez in particular, if he's going to dart out for 3 wide. Just didn't get the momentum for that top line coming through towards turn 3.
Budafoco clear. Carter clear. Talbot there on the high line, coming to the white flag. 1 lap to go in the season opener for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. And everybody's starting to make moves on the outside as that high line tries to form up for one last run at the checkered flag.
And if I'm someone like Buttafuoco, I am trying to get the run off the corner, block as much, and one driver's out of fuel.
Trouble there for Talbot, who gets put in the back of the field. We are going to race to the checkered flag. So now Buttafuoco's got to try and block maybe 3 or 4 trucks here.
Will Buttafuoco have enough gas, though? Already Talbot running out. Here comes Salick.
Look at Colton Salick with the run on the outside with help from Sean Jensick as they're going to wreck behind him. Can Salick hold off Jensick coming to the line? Answer is yes, he can. Colton Salick out of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University takes home the first checkered flag in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. He took advantage of all the calamity and chaos at the end and made it pay off.
Unreal. Unreal, to say the least. 26 spots gained throughout the night, but for Colton Salick, chose the right lines at the right time. He was able to find some help on that top groove to be able to charge ahead. Keep in mind, he started bottom line, row 4 for the restart.
And coming to the white flag, he was, I believe, scored 5th and managed to leapfrog the leaders on that last lap, courtesy of that trouble with Talbot and company, as he's going to come around to the front straightaway and I suspect probably give us a few big-time donuts in celebration as the first winner in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. Tonight's winning moment is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official fan refreshment of eNASCAR.
Just an incredible finish, to say the least, James. An incredible run for this type of a driver to make history.
And Salick's a driver that has experience in the sim across a lot of series. We've seen him race in a lot of official races, a lot of league races throughout iRacing, and not a surprise in that sense that he takes home the checkered flag as we take a look at our final results for this first race of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. Colton Salick gets the job done for Embry-Riddle ahead of Sean Jensick for the University of Rhode Island. It was Daniel Buttafuoco for Rutgers who brought it home 3rd. Connor O'Kresick for the Buffaloes of Colorado in 4th. Santiago Tires for UNC Charlotte in 5th. Jack Coyne was 6th ahead of Thomas Toomey for Virginia in 7th. Derek Jennings from Grand Canyon University was 8th. 9th was Stone Schaefer for Central Michigan. And Western Kentucky's Malachi Drake completed the top 10.
Then it's Anthony Keys, who recovered after getting spun at one point, to 11th. Carson Kane after his incident in turn 3 to 12th. And Edwin Grenier finished in 13th. Ken Kenyon finished in 14th after getting shuffled with about 10 laps to go. Trey Normile was in contention for the race win before one driver ran out of gas. Dylan All in 16th. Athena Leclerc involved in that big one down the backstretch in 17th. Wilson Phelps in 18th. Russell and Doyle, the top 20.
Daniel Carter for SUNY Polytechnic Institute in 21st. Kenneth Talbot for the University of Alabama at Huntsville in 22nd. Jack Painter for UNCW 23rd, and 24th was Ryan Kendrick. Wingate University's Jake Cummings was 25th. Paz for Valparaiso was 26th. Connor Hale 27th. So the rest of the field on your screen: Alex Galanix, Jonathan Diamond, Stephen Wilson, Haga Johnson, Blake Bottoms, Jose Solis Jr., Ryan Doucette, and Jackson Shipley for George Mason, the final of our 38 drivers that took part in this season opener. Now to take a look at our Coca-Cola move of the race. And Justin Prince, I have a hunch. I know where we're going with this one. Here's an onboard from Colton Salick. So we'll show you the last lap and how he got to victory lane at Daytona.
And it all started with the bump draft to Talbot, who, remember, was very tight on gas, but had to start on the outside. Not as big of an opportunity to be able to run low and save the revs. And then he had to keep his eyes open, because that's when Talbot, right about here, started to struggle with the gas. Couldn't lift off because of the final lap, but then built up the momentum, picking up a bit of draft and a bit of carnage below to be able to get enough of a run to get a chance on Buttafuoco.
And the contact there with Normile on the other truck definitely helped too. There was a run on the inside, but once they fell off, you saw Budafuco fall off on speed, and that allowed Yinsik to come behind Salick and give him the run. And then as they came to turn 4, they started wrecking behind him, and it was just a question of whether or not Yinsik was going to be able to get the run on Salick to make the pass, and he didn't have enough help. Made it very easy for Colton Salick to bring home the checkered flag for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, our first ever winner in the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. Time to turn our attention to victory lane. Justin Prince, you are with our first winner in this series, Colton Salick.
Hey, Colton, you've made history tonight. First winner in series history, 1 lap led. How does it feel to be a part of history, Colton?
That's unbelievable. That all happened so fast that I'm still kind of trying to process what happened. That went from just like playing the long game and waiting for everyone to wreck to just doing everything in 1 lap. It was the longest lap of my life, I think.
What was kind of the reaction when you realized, oh boy, the truck in front of me is running out of gas coming out of turn 2?
Well, I had Brian Hicks and Logan Kress spotting all race. They did a fantastic job. I can't thank them enough. But no one knew that was going to happen. So I had absolutely no clue. I guess a bunch of other people were talking about it. I wish I was involved in the loop there because I just kind of thought he locked the brakes up or lagged or something. But all of a sudden I went from pushing, and I was pushing hard because I think it was the white flag at that point. And then suddenly he's just completely gone, just disappears. So I don't know. That was crazy. I barely remember half of the white flag. I just remember coming off turn 4 and realizing that whoever that was behind me, I think it was Sean, didn't have enough damage to actually stay on my bumper. So I just had to just keep it in one piece.
And of course, you've been a long-time sim racer, especially for the past 5 years or so. And this is all while you're in your freshman year, I should say, in aerospace engineering. How has been trying to manage your sim side with trying to learn aerospace engineering?
To be honest, it's kind of been week to week. When I showed up, I put all my rig under my bed here in my dorm and just kind of focused on building relationships and actually trying to see what this is like, a new experience in college. But especially the second semester, I became more involved with Formula SAE team on campus, and I know they're all watching right now. But I've been able to balance that on top of sim racing again. So it's been pretty fun being able to do both and have a good balance between school, real life racing, on campus Formula, and now sim racing again. So
I believe a few people are ready to see how you are feeling. Congrats, Colton.
Thank you. Also, really quickly, just want to thank Brian and Logan again. Ricky helped me all race in the back while we were missing wrecks. Everyone watching, my family, iRacing, you guys did a great job as always in the booth. So thanks, guys.
Colton Salick, first winner in series history. Sean Jensick was a big part of that. He mentioned Sean's name, in fact, with some of the pushes towards the end. What was your perspective like for that final lap there in your 29? Sean, do you have a copy? Try this one more time. Sean, do you have a copy? You can tell the excitement with the silence there, but for Daniel Budafuco, it's potentially heartbreak because Daniel led 14 laps tonight. He ends up finishing in third. Daniel, your final lap perspective.
Ugh, man. That hurts. We did a good job getting the lead before that last yellow, and then all I was doing was just making sure that the guy behind me was right directly behind me so he couldn't pull out of line. And the guy in second there behind me got hit. I think the second or third hooked, and then saw my mirror. There was a big pack behind me, and I knew at that point I'm just a sitting duck. I could try to block, but there's no point trying to wreck myself for that. So, good job to Colton. He did a good job getting that win. We got home third, which is really cool. Honestly, did a lot better than I thought I would. Not the best at these plate races, and worked really well with a lot of guys who were in the race, and came home relatively clean compared to a lot of guys. And yeah, I'll take it. I'm really happy with that result.
In our conversation before the race today, you mentioned that you wanted to keep the truck clean to its go time. Fortunately, had the damage by go time. How much do you feel that may have impacted you in those final laps?
It definitely did impact me. I mean, even that second long green flag run, when I think the 5 was it, he was leading a top lane. That damage was definitely hurting me. I had around 12.5 seconds of damage, and typically like the low line and the high line are relatively even, but I was flat out all the way, and I just couldn't do anything. I was getting good pushes, and I just didn't have the speed to really keep the top line from stacking up in front of me. But fortunately, I had a yellow, which was kind of lucky, so that evened things out a bit.
And you talked about the importance of trying to secure the victory. Of course, third spot still in the prize pool for scholarships. How big is that in terms of that, knowing how much you've been working, especially as a junior in your supply chain management program?
It's really big, yeah. I mean, any sort of, college tuition is a big thing. So any sort of money I could get to help that and not getting college debt is really important. But yeah, I mean, it's just, honestly, it was a pleasure being here. I mean, to even make it to this field is really amazing. Got to race against a lot of great drivers. Got to race against Santi, who we worked really well with. Dylan, Steve Wilson was up there, and Reese. It was a really good field, and to finish third after there and to survive all of that, which is really hard to do at a track like this. It's it's really good.
Congratulations to the podium, Dan.
Thank you. Yes, and before you guys go, I want to say a big shout out to all my friends in chat, everybody over at Rutgers. My mom, Rutgers alumni, for designing the car. She did a great job. And everybody at the podium broadcast and iRacing broadcast for doing a great job. Thank you guys so much, and ready for Charlotte next month.
Once again, that's Daniel Buttafuoco rounding out the podium for today's run, and a very stellar run, James. But the next track is going to be even more challenging, Charlotte.
Mile and a half, bread and butter of the NASCAR world. Our race day is March 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can tune into eNASCAR.com/live to catch the broadcast. The time attack, however, is open March 7th through the 21st. So if you didn't get the chance to be part of tonight's race, but you're eligible, you get into eNASCAR.com/college, read up all about the series, potentially check your eligibility, and you too may be joining us in this next race. For everyone at iRacing, eNASCAR, and NACE Starleague, and for all the folks who helped make tonight's show possible, Drew Adamson, Sean Ambrose, Alex Horn, Tyler Hudson, Zach Johnson, Jay Kennedy, Tyler Maxson, Blake McCandless, Joe McManus, Cisco Scaramuza, Travis Sullenberger, Corey Revenge, and my colleague in the booth, Justin Prince. I am James Punt. Thank you so much for watching the opening race of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series powered by NACE Starleague. We look forward to seeing you next month at Charlotte Motor Speedway.